The Sri Lanka attacks killed nearly 6 times as many people as the Christchurch Mosque massacre. And this isn't some kind of grisly competition. Both attacks were horrendous. But are we going to see world leaders donning crucifixes and making special speeches in support of the Christian community? Or will this entire story be forgotten about by the media and by much of the world within 48 hours?
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening?
Breakthrough Media.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Why does the most persecuted religious group in the world receive the least sympathy from world leaders and the media after each devastating attack?
Because it's the truth. You know, Ephesians 6 verse 12. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. That's what we're seeing. That's why what we believe is seen as hate.
105 Christian churches or buildings are attacked or burned every month. An average of 345 Christians are killed for faith-related reasons every single month. The Sri Lanka attacks killed nearly 6 times as many people as the Christchurch Mosque massacre. And this isn't some kind of grisly competition. Both attacks were horrendous. But are we going to see world leaders donning crucifixes and making special speeches in support of the Christian community? Or will this entire story be forgotten about by the media and by much of the world within 48 hours? Will all those liberals who poured out their soul after the New Zealand mosque attack now change their flags in solidarity with Sri Lankan Christian community, hold fundraisers and condemn Islamists who carried out this attack? Why do some leftists, who collectively blame all white people or all conservatives after every anti-Muslim attack, choose not to denounce Islamic terror attacks, but when they occur, to blame the victims? This left-wing journalist responded to a barbaric Islamic terror attack which targeted Christians by blaming Christian missionaries. Have we now reached the stage where the fault lies not with the Islamic terrorist who blew himself up, but with the people who may have offended him? In what kind of messed up clown world does that kind of rhetoric make any sense? Why did CBS News report the perpetrators as religious extremists and not Muslim extremists? Why did it take the media over a day to report the patently obvious that this was an Islamic terror attack? Why did the Sri Lankan government demand that its people not even ask who was behind the attacks? Do they not deserve to know? Why does the Western media routinely hype the threat posed by right-wing extremism, yet routinely downplay the threat posed by Islamic extremism, when the threat posed by Islamic extremism is clearly far greater? One of the alleged suicide bombers in Sri Lanka has been identified as Islamic extremist Zaran Hashim. He previously posted a video in which he stated that, quote, anyone who disagrees with Muslims should be killed. Why was this video allowed to circulate by YouTube, which routinely removes or restricts conservative content for little more than being politically incorrect? Why did Al Jazeera journalist Saif Khalid claim that reporting Hashim's name was Islamophobic? Is it now Islamophobic to accurately state that the suicide bombers in Sri Lanka were Muslims? Imagine if Christians targeted mosques during Ramadan and tried to kill as many Muslims as possible. There'd be a global outcry, there'd be weeks of mourning, there'd be permanent recriminations. Sri Lanka, nearly 300 dead, 500 injured, and by the end of this week, it will be a footnote. Why?
posted a video Monday about the Easter Sunday church bombings in Sri Lanka. I would have posted something on the day of the attacks, but I usually wait for the local authorities to identify the individual or group that's responsible. Some of the names of the attackers were leaked on some websites on Easter Sunday, but I didn't see anything official until Monday morning. So I posted my thoughts, and someone in the comments section said something like, "I think it's weird calling us Easter worshipers." And I thought, wait, did I call Christians Easter worshipers? I looked at my title, I looked at my description, didn't see anything about Easter worshipers. Then I saw other people complaining about calling Christians Easter worshipers. So I went back through my entire video trying to figure out where they were getting this from. Finally, someone sent me a link to a Ben Shapiro video. Turns out it wasn't me calling the victims of the church bombings Easter worshipers. It was Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Ben Shapiro put everything together nicely, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So let's check out some clips. First, we have the New Zealand mosque shootings.
There is something odd about the reaction to these attacks. There's something very odd about the reaction to these attacks. So in the aftermath of the Christchurch attacks in New Zealand, everyone came forth and they said, it's time to re-examine and it's time to examine the relationship between white supremacy and Islamophobia, between the slaughter of innocents at a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, and the evils of white supremacy. And that was perfectly appropriate. The evils of white supremacy are indeed evil. And looking at white supremacist groups and looking at the evil they perpetrate is well worth looking into.
So everyone was ready to condemn the mosque shootings in New Zealand, as we all should. Everyone was quick to name and defend the victims, as we all should. Everyone was ready to condemn the ideology of the terrorist, as we all should. And yet, if we fast forward to the church bombings in Sri Lanka, some of the same people who were extremely precise when they were condemning the New Zealand mosque shootings suddenly became strikingly vague.
Hillary Clinton tweeted this in the aftermath of the Christchurch attacks. Quote, "My heart breaks for New Zealand and the global Muslim community. We must continue to fight the perpetuation and normalization of Islamophobia and racism in all its forms. White supremacist terrorists must be condemned by leaders everywhere. Their murderous hatred must be stopped." Okay, contrast that, which is a very strong statement about the victims, right? It states who the victims are, it states who the perpetrators are, and it states that their ideology must be fought. Contrast that with Hillary Clinton's comments after nearly 300 people are murdered while going to church during Easter in Sri Lanka. So here's what she said about Sri Lanka. Quote, "On this holy weekend for many faiths, we must stand united against hatred and violence. I'm praying for everyone affected by today's horrific attack on Easter worshippers and travelers in Sri Lanka." Do you notice the difference? No clear explanation of who was targeted. Easter worshippers, not Christians. Easter worshippers. Also, a holy weekend for many faiths. Well, I would be the other faith for which this is a holy weekend, right? This is Passover, so this is Pesach for me. I would be the other faith for which this is a holy weekend. It's Easter, and it's Passover also. We weren't targeted this weekend.
Easter worshippers? That makes it sound like they worship Easter in Sri Lanka. Can you imagine Hillary Clinton describing an attack on Muslims like this? If someone had shot a bunch of Muslims who were having a Ramadan meal, can you imagine Hillary Clinton tweeting, "During this holy month for many faiths, we must stand united against hatred and violence. I'm praying for everyone affected by today's horrific attacks on Ramadan eaters." Ramadan eaters? Easter worshippers? But back to the tale of two tweets.
I mean, that tweet from Hillary, that contrast is really stunning. On this holy weekend of many faiths, we must stand united against hatred and violence. What kind of hatred? Any clues? Do we have any clues? Well, it turns out one of the bombers, one of the guys arrested, one of the planners of this, his name is Mohammed. Do we have any clues as to who this may have been?
I think I know.
It turns out that there was an Islamist group that the government knew about and has already taken credit for this. Any clues at all, guys?
Pick me! Pick me!
What kind of hatred and violence are we talking about? Any specifics?
Islamic hatred and violence?
Okay, Barack Obama did the same thing. Here's what he did in the aftermath of Christchurch. "Michelle and I send our condolences to the people of New Zealand. We grieve with you and the Muslim community. All of us must stand against hatred in all of its forms." So he grieves with the people of Christchurch and the Muslim community more generally. Here's Barack Obama in the aftermath of what just happened in Sri Lanka. He tweeted out, The attacks on tourists and Easter worshippers in Sri Lanka are an attack on humanity. Not on Muslims everywhere, on humanity, generally. On a day devoted to love, redemption, and renewal, we pray for the victims and stand with the people of Sri Lanka. Is it forbidden to say Christians? Are we not allowed to say the words Christians?
We could just change our names to Easter worshippers to avoid confusion.
Obama's is not as bad as Hillary's, by the way. Hillary's is much worse. Hillary comes forth and she says, we have to fight Islamophobia in all of its forms and white supremacy in all of its forms. And then radical Muslims go and kill a bunch of Christians at church on Easter Sunday. And it's hatred and violence are really bad, guys. I can't really get more specific than that. Don't know how to get more specific.
But why, Ben? Why are these leftist politicians like this?
I think that it is indicative of a failure on the part of many people on the left to single out Christians as victims, because that does not fit within the intersectional hierarchy. In the United States, the intersectional hierarchy for the left is the suggestion that we know, just based on our own experiences, based on anecdotal evidence, we know who are the most victimized groups in America. Those victimized groups are transgender people and black people and Muslims. Those are the people who are most victimized in America. Never mind the hate crime statistics that say that on a per capita basis in the United States, Jews are the most victimized. And never mind the global statistics that say on a global basis, Christians are the most victimized group on planet Earth.
Ah, so in the United States, Jews are by far the most victimized group per capita. On planet Earth, Christians are the most victimized group, but leftists have a narrative that they need to preserve. According to that narrative, Jews and Christians are the oppressors, and the only real victims of persecution are Muslims, people in the LGBTQ community, and racial minorities. When there's a terrorist attack, like the Christchurch Mosque massacre, that fits the narrative. A racist killed a bunch of Muslims. Perfect fit for the narrative. So in this case, we can say, you see, we told you that there's an epidemic of racism and Islamophobia. It's time to unite and take action against racism and Islamophobia. Vote for our side. But when there's an Islamic terrorist attack, Muslims killing Christians, Muslims killing Jews, Muslims killing Hindus, Muslims killing homosexuals, Muslims killing Asians, Muslims killing Africans, Muslims killing other Muslims, that doesn't fit the narrative. Islamic terrorist attacks are a constant threat to the leftist narrative, but they can't just keep quiet. When multiple churches are bombed by jihadis, that would make their bias too obvious. They have to condemn the attacks, so they just get really, really vague. We condemn hate. Why is their narrative so precious to them? Well, that's how they get votes. If you get millions of people to buy your story about what's wrong with the world, and you convince them that you're the solution to the problem, you've just won a ton of voters. But notice just how silly this is. Suppose we buy the narrative of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Suppose we agree that Muslims are the real victims and that racism is lurking around every corner. What are politicians really doing about these problems? Nothing. Why? Because politicians aren't the people who fix problems like racism or hatred. There are times when politicians are needed, i.e. when laws need to be changed or when segregation needs to end. But when this man hates that man because of the color of his skin or because of his religion, politicians are next to useless. People interacting with other people in their communities is what ultimately reduces racism. Politicians just get in the way. Sometimes it's in their best interest to stoke the flames because that's how they stay in power. But if we're talking about hate that arises from a specific ideology, such as Islam, we undermine the hate by undermining the ideology. And when it comes to undermining the violent and hateful teachings of Muhammad, politicians are even worse. They defend and promote and praise Muhammad and the Quran. In doing so, they're helping terrorists, not hindering them. So don't fall for the nonsense of politicians who are trying to sell you a false narrative in order to keep their party in power. As for you leftists who are thrilled to condemn violence against Muslims but can't even say the word Christians when Christian men, women, and children are slaughtered in the name of Allah, be consistent or be quiet.
The erosion of American democracy.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet. You get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
The erosion of American democracy.
And when your son looks at you and says, Mama, look, you won, bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't, because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach them.
The erosion of American democracy.
CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something, some people did something, and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
The erosion of American democracy.
This Make America Great Again hat is just as maddening and frustrating and triggering for me to look at as a KKK hood.
These guys. Look, man.
And the subversion of our most basic governmental norms.
Have you ever felt?
Oh my God, this just keeps getting worse.